Hey, today I'm talking about three 1940s Joan Fontaine films. And the names of those three movies are You Gotta Stay Happy, Letter from an Unknown Woman, and Rebecca. Oh, that's the biz. You Gotta Stay Happy. This is a 1948 film starring Joan Fontaine and Jimmy Stewart, and I loved this film so much. It's so silly and fun, and just like all of the jokes work for me. I was really surprised by that because it's the 40s and like a lot of 40s jokes don't land on me, but this one, like, pretty much all of them did. It was so good. So the basic premise is the movie opens up. It's Joan's wedding day, but oh no, she has cold feet. But then she reluctantly agrees to marry this guy, but then on their wedding night, the husband gets a little rapey, but then thankfully Joan gets away and Jimmy Stewart very, very reluctantly helps her out. And maybe there's some sparks in the air. It's so much fun. And I love too that it really felt like they were playing more unique characters, especially Jimmy Stewart. Cause like, he's just kind of a grump in this film and he really doesn't want to help people, but he understands the need to help people. So with a bit of persuasion, he'll do it. But like, he's more so just focused in on his goals of running his cargo plane company, which makes sense because like he poured his life savings and his friend's life savings all into this company. He wants it to be a success. That's very understandable. And things getting in the way of that are frustrating. So like, I totally get his perspective, but it's just like, I don't know. He's great. And then Joan's great. And Joan has a lot of layers to her too. And like, maybe there's some mystery stuff there too. And I was afraid with a name like You Gotta Stay Happy that it was going to be pro just like sucking it up like, oh, your life's terrible but you still gotta be happy or something like that. That wasn't the messaging at all. It's really cool, really interesting. I really like it because it's really, really good. I rank this really high. Totally 100% recommend this movie. Next up is Letter from an Unknown Woman. This is a 1948 film, again starring Joan Fontaine and also featuring Louise Jourdan. Joan also produced this with her own production company. This is the first film from her production company, so that was cool. And apparently this is her favorite film of her own, according to IMDb trivia, so that's cool. I can understand why. It's pretty solid. So the basic premise is this man gets a letter from an unknown woman, and in the letter she details how she has been on the periphery of his life for the last several years. To explain it a little bit more, it flashes back to when Joan's character was a teenager, around 16. She lived in this really high-end apartment complex, and one of the other tenants was this guy who is a young composer. People constantly compare him to Mozart. He's going to be the next big thing, but he also really likes to drink and maybe sleep around a lot. But Joan falls in love with his music, but also he's handsome, and so she gets a very strong teenage crush on him. And it's borderline obsessive stalkery. But again, she's a teenager, so that's kind of, you know, the vibe. And then once she gets older, she does kind of some more explicitly stalker stuff that's borderline like, ugh, what are you doing? But again, she's like 18, 20 years old, and she's being harmless. She isn't actively hurting herself or others to do her creepy thing. But then she eventually gets her moment with him, and it's interesting. And then things kind of play out from there. But it was really, really interesting, especially like the weird stalkery aspect of it too, because part of it is that she doesn't have the courage to be able to just talk to him, especially because like had she talked to him at any point, he's fine and open to it. And I was very surprised by the ending, especially for a 40s movie. It went in such an unexpected way, but I liked the ending. It was a good ending. It was an interesting ending. So yeah, I really enjoyed this film. I would definitely recommend it. Not as highly as You Gotta Stay Happy, but I really loved that film. This is just kind of like a general, I would totally recommend. This is a good, solid drama. It's good and interesting and not something you see even today as a common story. So yeah, it's worth a watch, 100%. And lastly is Rebecca. This is a 1940 Hitchcock film, again starring Joan Fontaine and also led by Laurence Olivier. And the basic premise is this poor woman meets this rich guy and they both fall for each other, so they get married. But now she's dealing with the culture shock of now being rich, imposter syndrome because of that. And then also she's dealing with the shadow of his previous wife who recently passed away. More of the bulk of it is about that. It's very solid. This movie gets a lot of praise, and I can definitely understand why. Joan was nominated for an Oscar in this film, and I can definitely understand that. I really, really loved the end. Like, the entire third act was incredible. Once we finally started getting answers to things, and the story kind of kept taking more interesting twists and turns in the third act, and just kind of revealing more stuff, was super fascinating, and the movie really got me there. But the second act, I think, is kind of what brought it down a bit. The first act is definitely interesting, but the second act, I think, more so relies on the anxieties of Joan's character as she's dealing with this world. And though I can definitely recognize that she's having these anxieties, I think this is kind of like a lost in translation type of thing, wherein I'm more used to modern interpretations of anxiety in film, and just like, even though I do see that she's anxious, it doesn't get me to feel the same because I'm more used to modern anxiety portrayals in film and television. And also, it wasn't entirely clear exactly where the story was going. Like, it kind of just felt like it was just a relationship drama film, and I'm like, okay. But no, there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more interesting things to it. So yeah, I definitely enjoyed it a lot. It's a quite liked, so it's basically a 4 out of 5. So again, I would still totally recommend it. It's definitely not my favorite Hitchcock film, but it's still definitely a good film that's worth a watch as well. Alrighty, now for today's rankings. First up, we got You Gotta Stay Happy, sitting at number 9 in the really liked. I told you I ranked it really high. I love this movie. It's so good. Give it a watch. And then after that is Letter from an Unknown Woman, sitting at number 31, also in the really liked category. And then bringing up the rear, not too terribly far behind, is Rebecca, sitting at number 40. At the top of the quite like section. And this is out of a total of 93 old movies so far this year.